Rain hammered the marble steps of the Vega estate like God himself was grieving. Camila Reyes stood in the doorway, divorce papers trembling in her bloodless hands. Her maid, Rosa, gripped her arm from behind. "Miss Camila, don't let them see you break." "I'm not breaking," Camila whispered. "I'm memorizing." Inside, Dante Vega stood beside Isabel Fontaine draped in diamonds, wearing victory-like perfume. Camila's attorney leaned close. "You don't have to sign tonight." "She already knows," Dante said without turning around. His voice could silence a room full of armed men. "Sign it, Camila." She looked at him, really looked the way you look at something you're burying forever. 7 years, she said quietly. "Were enough," he finished coldly. Isabel reached up and straightened Dante's tie. Camila signed. She walked out into the rain. She didn't run. She didn't collapse. She simply whispered to the night. "You'll need me before I need you." 3 hours later, inside St. Mercy Hospital. A surgeon burst through the corridor screaming. "We're losing him. Someone find his emergency contact now." A nurse grabbed the file. The emergency contact listed Camila Reyes Vega. The world feared Dante Vega the way they feared natural disasters. Not because you could see him coming. Because by the time you did it was already over. He had built the Vega syndicate from blood and silence. 47 cities. 3 continents. Enemies who had once called themselves his equals now answered his phone calls on the first ring. He wore power the way other men wore skin effortlessly. Permanently. His underboss, Marco, stood at the window of the penthouse watching the rain drown the city below. "The Reyes situation," he said carefully. "Your men are asking questions. Let them ask. She was with you 7 years, boss." Dante poured 2 fingers of whiskey and didn't drink it. Just held the glass. "She was my wife. Not my weakness." Marco went quiet. That was the only safe response. What Marco didn't say, what no one dared say, was that Camila Reyes was the only human being in 47 cities who had ever made Dante Vega pause. The only person whose silence in a room changed the temperature of it. But Dante had decided silence was the same as worthlessness. He had decided wrong. What no one in the empire knew, what even Dante hadn't been told, was that 3 months earlier, his personal physician, Dr. Ruiz, had received an anonymous wire transfer. Enough to fund the experimental cardiac treatment Dante had refused to acknowledge he needed. The transfer came from a private account. Camila Reyes Vega's private account. She had paid for the medication. The specialist from Geneva. The security detail ensuring the treatments weren't intercepted by rival families who would have paid fortunes to know Dante Vega's heart was failing. She paid for all of it. And she told no one. Not even her closest friend, Jasmine, who called her that night while Camila sat alone in her car outside the hospital, watching Dante's medical chart through a window she had no right to access anymore. "Camila. Talk to me. I'm fine. You just got divorced in the rain." "I'm fine, Jasmine." A long silence. "Did you eat today?" Camila looked down at her hand still bearing the ghost of his ring. "I had coffee." "That's not eating." It was enough. She ended the call. Pulled the next medical invoice from her bag. Opened it carefully, the way you open something that's going to hurt you. $432,000. For the next surgical procedure Dante didn't know he needed. She had already sold her grandmother's jewelry. Her investment shares. The apartment in Miami she had spent 3 years building equity in. Now this. She picked up her pen. She signed. Then she sat back and stared at the rain and said nothing to no one, because there was nothing left to say. Inside the hospital, Dr. Ruiz read over the payment confirmation and shook his head slowly. His assistant looked up. "Is everything in order?" The payment cleared. He paused. Does Mr. Vega know who's been funding his treatment? No. And Mrs. Vega, the ex-Mrs. Vega, does she want him told? The assistant hesitated. She specifically said no. Dr. Ruiz set the file down. God help that man, he said quietly, when he finds out. That same night Dante's phone rang. An unknown number. A distorted voice said, "Your wife has been paying for your survival. And she just ran out of money." Dante stared at his phone long after the call ended. He didn't move. He didn't call Marco. He didn't do anything a man who controlled 47 cities should have done when receiving an unverified, anonymous threat. He sat completely still. Because something in his chest, something he had spent years training to feel, nothing lurched. He called Dr. Ruiz at 2 a.m. The doctor answered on the second ring, which told Dante everything. Men who answer at 2 a.m. on the second ring are men who have been waiting for the call. Ruiz. Silence. Who has been funding my treatment? A longer silence. Mr. Vega. The name. Now. Dr. Ruiz exhaled. The patient confidentiality arrangement was. I don't care about arrangements. I care about the name. Another pause. Then, very quietly, I was sworn to silence, sir. And I will keep that oath. But I will tell you this: the person who has been paying has not missed a single payment. Not one. For 14 months. Dante hung up. 14 months. He sat with that number. 14 months ago Camila had come to him pale and quiet and told him she needed to talk about something important. He had been in the middle of a negotiation with the Delgado family and had told her it could wait. It had waited. She never brought it up again. He had assumed it was something domestic. Something small. The kind of thing wives said when they wanted attention he didn't have the patience to give. He reached for his whiskey. Set it down untouched. Again. Across the city, Camila was awake too, but not by choice. She was at St. Anthony's Clinic. Not as a patient. As a donor. She sat in a chair with a needle in her arm, enrolled in a plasma donation program she had signed up for 6 weeks ago. $12 per session. She went 3 times a week. Jasmine had found out 2 days ago. She had driven to the clinic and sat down across from Camila with the specific energy of a woman trying very hard not to scream. You are donating plasma, Jasmine said flatly. For $12. It doesn't hurt. Camila. The procedure has a gap in coverage. I'm short on that. He divorced you. Jasmine's voice cracked on the word. He stood next to that woman and divorced you. And you are sitting in a clinic at 11 at night giving blood for $12 to pay for his surgery. Camila looked at the needle in her arm. He can't die, Jasmine. Why not? The question hung in the air. Camila didn't answer it because the answer was complicated, and the answer was something she wasn't ready to say out loud. Because the answer was, because I still love him. And love doesn't turn off like a light switch just because the man holding it drops it. She looked out the window instead. How much do you have left? Jasmine asked softly. Camila's jaw tightened. Enough for the procedure. Not enough for the recovery medication. Jasmine grabbed her hand. Squeezed it. Camila didn't squeeze back. She was conserving energy. She had been for months. The next morning, Isabel Fontaine walked into Dante's office and handed him a folder. I had her investigated, she said sweetly. You deserve to know what kind of woman your ex-wife really is. Isabel Fontaine had the particular beauty of a weapon, precise, polished, and designed entirely to cause damage. She set the folder on Dante's desk with the careful patience of a woman who had rehearsed this moment. Her diamonds caught the morning light. Her red lips formed something that wasn't quite a smile. Open it, she said. Dante looked at the folder. Did not touch it. You had my ex-wife investigated. I had your interests protected. She sat across from him, crossing her legs with the elegance of a woman who believed elegance was a form of control. I thought you should know who you were really married to. Tell me. Isabel opened the folder herself, turning it toward him. She's been liquidating assets for over a year. Her grandmother's estate jewelry sold. Her Miami property sold. Shares in 3 different private companies sold. She paused for effect. Every penny going to the same place. Dante's eyes moved across the page. He kept his face still. The effort it took was enormous. An anonymous medical fund, Isabel continued, her voice light, almost amused. Isn't that interesting? A woman with nothing left suddenly playing silent benefactor. She tilted her head. The question I'd be asking is, who is she really trying to own? What does she want in return? Dante looked up slowly. You think she's buying leverage? I think she's buying you. Isabel leaned forward. She knew about your condition before I did. Before most of your men did. That's not love, Dante. That's strategy. She's positioning herself as indispensable so when you're vulnerable. Enough. Isabel pulled back. Smiled again. I'm only protecting you. Leave the folder. She left it. What happened next Dante would replay for the rest of his life. His phone rang 40 minutes after Isabel left. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Mr. Vega. The voice was male. Calm in the way that men are calm when they are holding something over you and enjoying the weight of it. My name is irrelevant. What is relevant is that your ex-wife was photographed outside St. Mercy 3 nights ago. Dante's hand tightened on the phone. She's been funding your cardiac treatments. We know the clinic. We know the account. And we know she's almost out of money. A pause that was too long to be anything but deliberate. We'd like her to fund something else instead. Tell her she has 48 hours to respond or we release the photographs to your rivals. Every family in the syndicate will know Dante Vega's heart is failing. And they'll know the woman keeping you alive is completely alone and completely unprotected. The line went dead. Dante stood in absolute stillness. Then he moved faster than he had moved in months, picking up his secondary phone and calling Marco with 3 words, find Camila. Now. Because someone had just put a target on the only person in the world who had been quietly dying to keep him alive. And Dante Vega had spent his entire career being the most dangerous thing in any room. He intended to remind them of that. Marco called back in 6 minutes. Boss, I found her. She's at the clinic. A pause that stopped Dante cold. And there are 2 men outside who don't belong there. He drove himself. No convoy. No announcement. Just the black car moving through the city at a speed that had nothing to do with traffic laws, and Dante behind the wheel with the particular focus of a man who has identified a threat and is removing it. He found the 2 men outside St. Anthony's clinic exactly where Marco said they would be, leaning against a car across the street, watching the entrance with the patient, professional stillness of hired work. He got out of his car. They saw him. They made the right decision. They left. He went inside. Camila was in the 3rd bay, needle in her arm, eyes closed against the fluorescent light, and when she opened them and found him standing there, she didn't startle. She simply looked at him with the composure of a woman who had learned that composure was the only form of self-protection she had left. You shouldn't be here, she said. 2 men were outside. They won't be back. He pulled up the plastic chair beside her and sat. How long has this been going on? The donations? The threats? A silence. Her jaw tightened. How did you? Camila. She looked at the ceiling. 3 weeks. He absorbed that. 3 weeks she had been living with a cartel threat and managing it alone while physically deteriorating and continuing to pay for his medical care. 3 weeks. Why didn't you contact me? He said. Her eyes came back down to his. Because it wasn't your problem. He stopped himself. Restarted. These people are dangerous. I know what dangerous looks like. A small, terrible smile. I was married to it. He had no answer for that. The clinic nurse appeared at the curtain. She looked at Dante with the wary recognition of someone encountering a category of person she had no protocol for. Is everything okay in here? Fine, Camila said. He's leaving. I'm not leaving. The nurse disappeared. Camila looked at him for a long moment. Then, what do you want, Dante? Truly. What is it you think you can do here? I can stop them from touching you. And then what? Her voice was even. Honest. The most devastating kind of honest. You remove the threat. You go back to Isabel. I go back to she gestured at the needle in her arm. This. Nothing changes. Things have changed. Because you found out. She shook her head slowly. Nothing I did was supposed to change anything. It was supposed to keep you alive. That's all. He looked at her, really looked, the way he had not allowed himself to look in longer than he could honestly account for, and what he saw tore something loose in him that he couldn't name and couldn't stop. She was thinner than she had been. The shadows under her eyes were deep and structural. Her hands on the armrest were still, but there was a quality to that stillness that was different from strength. It was the stillness of someone running on fumes and refusing to show it. Camila. The session ends in 10 minutes, she said quietly. You can wait outside. He waited inside. When the nurse removed the needle, Camila stood too fast. The room tilted. Dante caught her before she hit the floor. And in the second before she recovered her composure, she grabbed his jacket with both hands and said his name, just his name, in a voice so raw it sounded like it had been living in her chest for months waiting to get out. He drove her home. She didn't argue. She didn't have the energy to argue, and some quieter, more honest part of her was too tired to pretend she wasn't glad someone was there. She directed him to an apartment on the east side of the city, small, clean, nothing like the estate. The kind of place that said, I am starting over and I am doing it practically. No sentimentality in the furniture. No photographs on the walls except one, her mother, laughing at something off camera. He looked at it. She passed 2 years ago, Camila said, moving to the kitchen. While you were in Singapore. I didn't tell you until you got back. I remember. I handled the arrangements alone. She filled a glass of water. Her hands were steady now. I got good at handling things alone. He stood in the center of the room that was her new life and felt the full accumulated weight of what he had cost her. The night we signed the papers, he said. She looked at him. You said, I hope she loves you enough to die for you. He paused. I didn't understand what you meant. I know you didn't. I understand it now. She set the glass down. Turned to face him fully. In the small apartment light she looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had carried something enormous for a very long time and had not yet put it down. I want to ask you something, she said. And I want you to answer me honestly. Not like a man protecting his empire. Like a person. Ask. Did you ever love me? At any point in 7 years was it real? Or was I always just? She stopped. Chose the word carefully. Convenient. The question sat between them. Dante looked at her and understood that this was the only moment that mattered in the conversation, that whatever he said next would either be the truest thing he had ever said or another wound she would carry quietly and alone. The night I was shot, he said. In the car. You held the wound for 22 minutes and you never once looked frightened. You just kept talking to me. Kept telling me to stay awake. He paused. I fell in love with you in those 22 minutes. And I spent every day after that trying to not need it. She was very still. Because needing something means it can be taken, he said. And I was not built to survive things being taken from me. So you took it from yourself first, she said softly. Yes. Rain had started again outside, hitting the window in the same rhythm it always chose when things between them were breaking or breaking open. They both heard it. Neither mentioned it. You should go, she said finally. The men from the cartel. I'll call you if they come back. A pause. I'll actually call you. He moved toward the door. At the threshold he stopped. The procedure is Thursday. Dr. Ruiz needs confirmation that funding is in place. Silence. I'll handle it, she said. You've handled enough. He didn't look back. Let me handle Thursday. He left before she could refuse. Thursday morning Dr. Ruiz called Dante before the procedure. Mr. Vega. There's something in her file you need to see before we begin. Something she signed 8 months ago that I should have brought to your attention and didn't. His voice was grave. It changes everything. He arrived at St. Mercy at 6 in the morning. Not as a patient. As a man who needed answers before anyone cut anything open. Dr. Ruiz met him in the corridor, a small, precise man who looked like he had not slept properly since whatever he was about to say had first come to rest on his conscience. Show me, Dante said. Ruiz led him to his office. Opened the filing system. Pulled a document and set it face up on the desk. Dante read it. He read it twice. It was a medical directive signed, witnessed, notarized. 8 months ago. It stated that in the event of Camila Reyes Vega's medical deterioration reaching a critical threshold, she declined aggressive intervention. She declined the treatment course that had been recommended. She declined the full regimen that could have stopped, possibly reversed what was happening to her body. The reason she had given, in her own handwriting, in the small box provided. Resources have been committed elsewhere. This is my choice freely made. Dante set the document down. Resources committed elsewhere, he said. To your treatment fund, Ruiz said quietly. The cost overlap meant she had to choose. She chose you. He paused. She signed this the same week she sold the Miami property. The room was very quiet. She chose to get sicker, Dante said. Not a question. Needing to hear the shape of it out loud. She chose to redirect her own treatment budget to yours. Ruiz removed his glasses. I should have contacted you. I was bound by her directive not to, and he stopped. I respected her wishes when I should have overridden them. I have had to live with that. Dante stood up. Where is she now? She came in for pre-op labs this morning. She's in the East Wing waiting area. He found her in a plastic chair by the window, coffee in both hands, watching the city wake up outside like it was something she was memorizing. She was wearing gray. No jewelry. Hair pulled back simply. She looked like herself. The self she had always been under the empire and the estate and the role he had required of her, something quieter and more essential than any of it. She heard him sit down beside her. She didn't look up. You read the directive? Yes. Ruiz. Yes. She wrapped both hands tighter around the coffee. It was my choice. You chose to let yourself get sicker to keep me alive. I chose to prioritize. Her voice was even. Almost academic. Resources were finite. You are not a resource. She looked at him then. And he saw something in her eyes he had not seen before, not grief, not anger, but a kind of profound exhaustion that came from being treated as a logistics problem by someone who should have treated her as a person. And the devastating awareness that she had, in some way, participated in that. No, she said quietly. I'm not. His jaw tightened. Starting today, you begin the full treatment course. I'm funding it entirely. Dante. Non-negotiable. His voice dropped. You made your choices for 14 months. Now I'm making mine. She looked at him for a long time. Then she looked back out the window. Okay, she said. It was the smallest word she had ever said to him. It broke him completely. His phone rang as they sat there. Marco. Boss Isabel. She knew. She had Camila's medical directive in her possession for 6 months. She buried it. She didn't want Camila getting treatment. His voice was flat with fury. She needed her out of the picture before you found out what she sacrificed. He drove to Isabel's penthouse. He didn't call ahead. He didn't send Marco. He went himself, which was the thing Isabel had never fully understood about Dante Vega. That when something truly mattered to him, he handled it alone. She answered the door in silk, champagne in hand, smile already forming. The smile died when she saw his face. Dante. He walked past her into the living room. Set the file Marco had compiled printed, because he needed it in his hands on her white marble table. Sit down, he said. I don't know what you think you. Sit. Down. She sat. He opened the file. You were given Camila's medical directive 6 months ago. You used her sacrifice to convince me she was positioning herself strategically. You framed her dying as manipulation. He turned a page. While she was in a plasma clinic 3 times a week. While she was declining her own treatment. He looked up. While she was choosing to get sicker so I could get better. Isabel's composure held barely. She was always going to be a problem for. She was my wife. She was your weakness. The room went very quiet. Dante looked at Isabel with the particular, dangerous stillness that had preceded every significant act of his career. His men knew that stillness. They gave it a wide berth. You knew about the directive, he said. You knew she had refused treatment. You knew she was deteriorating. And you said nothing because you needed her invisible. I was protecting. You were protecting your access. He stepped back. You're done. She stood. Her composure cracked at the edges, panic bleeding through the polish. Dante. Everything I did was for us. For this empire. She was never equipped to stand beside you. She was soft, she was. She held a gunshot wound closed with her bare hands for 22 minutes, he said quietly. And never told a single person. He picked up the file. That is the only definition of strength I recognize. He walked toward the door. Dante. My lawyers will contact yours. He stopped at the threshold. Did not look back. And Isabel, if you come anywhere near her again, I will remind you what it means to become a problem in this city. He left. He drove back to St. Mercy. In the parking lot, he called Marco. The full transaction history. Everything Camila sold, every payment made, every clinic visited. I need the complete picture. His voice was steady only because he was holding it steady through force. And the cartel that threatened her. I want names by morning. Marco sent the compiled file 20 minutes later. Dante sat in the parking lot and read it. The jewelry. The Miami property. The shares. The plasma donations. The second mortgage. And then the last item on the list. A watch. Listed as a pawned item. Description, men's luxury timepiece, engraved. He knew the engraving. Dante. Always. See. His own watch. The one he had given her for their 3rd anniversary. The one she had told him she lost. She had given him back his own watch. Without him knowing. Without asking for anything. He pressed both hands over his face. And for the first time in his adult life Dante Vega wept. He walked back inside. Found Jasmine in the hallway. How long? He asked. She looked at him without mercy. The doctor said if she doesn't begin the full treatment course within 72 hours, we're not having a different conversation. She paused. She agreed to try. But Dante, her voice broke. She said she's scared. Not of dying. Of hoping again. She was scared of hoping again. He sat with that in the hospital corridor for a long time after Jasmine walked away. Not afraid of dying. Afraid of hoping. What that said about what he had done to her, about what 14 months of loving him invisibly, of declining her own treatment, of watching him stand beside another woman at a gala, what that had done to her belief that good things were possible for her specifically. He stood up. He went to her room. She was sitting up in bed, not sleeping, watching the window the way she had been watching windows since he had come back into her orbit, as if the outside world was a safer place to rest her eyes than anywhere inside. He sat in a chair beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while. Jasmine told you, she said finally, that you're scared. I shouldn't have said it to her. You should always have someone to say it to. He leaned forward. I want to be that. I know I don't have the right. I know I haven't earned it. But I want you to say things to me. She looked at him sideways. Scary things. All of them. She was quiet. I'm scared that I spent so long making myself small around you that I forgot what I was before. A pause. I'm scared that my body doesn't trust me anymore because I kept overriding it. I'm scared that the treatment won't work because I waited too long. She turned to look at him directly. And I'm scared that you're here because you feel guilty, and that guilt will last exactly as long as the emergency does. He didn't flinch. That's fair. It's not a question. I know. I'm answering it anyway. He met her eyes. I am here because I am guilty. And also because there isn't a version of the next 10 minutes that doesn't have me sitting in this chair. Both things are true. The guilt will outlast the emergency. I will make sure you see that. She searched his face. I found the watch, he said quietly. Something shifted in her expression, a small, involuntary tightening, like someone touching a bruise they had forgotten was there. The pawn record, she said. Yes. She looked at the window. I needed the money. I know. It wasn't, I didn't mean it as a gesture. It was just the last thing of value I had left that was mine to sell. It had our names on it. She didn't answer. Camila. His voice dropped. Look at me. She looked. Nothing I build will ever matter more than this, he said. Not the syndicate. Not the empire. Not 47 cities. He paused. I need you to believe I understand that now. Even if you can't believe it yet. Even if it takes years. I need you to know I understand it. Outside, rain had started. Soft this time, not the violent rain of the estate, of divorce papers and marble steps. Something quieter. The kind of rain that doesn't announce itself. She reached out. Her hand covered his on the armrest. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The monitor beside her spiked suddenly. Alarms. Nurses flooding the room. A doctor pushing Dante back. Sir, you have to leave now. The last thing he saw before the door closed was Camila's eyes finding his. Completely calm. Terrifyingly calm. Like someone saying goodbye in the only way they knew how. He stood in the hallway for 40 minutes. He didn't sit. He didn't pace. He stood with his back against the wall, arms at his sides, eyes on the door, like if he watched it hard enough it would become something other than a barrier between him and what he had done. Marco arrived at some point. He stood beside Dante without speaking, because Marco was, above all other things, a man who understood the difference between silence that needed breaking and silence that didn't. Jasmine came out of the room at the 40-minute mark. Her eyes were red. Dante pushed off the wall. She's stable, Jasmine said quickly. For now. He exhaled. She needs the full treatment course to start tonight, Jasmine said. Her voice carried the weight of a woman who had watched her best friend disappear piece by piece and was running out of patience for anything that was not action. The delay has already. She stopped. Reset. Tonight, Dante. I've arranged it. Jasmine looked at him for a moment. Then nodded once. Good. He went back inside when the nurses finished. Camila was awake. Paler than before. The monitor beside her steadier now but speaking in numbers that he didn't have the medical vocabulary to read and didn't need to. The faces of the nursing staff had told him everything. She found him immediately when he sat down. You're still here, she said. I'm still here. She shifted against the pillow. I want to tell you something, she said. Before whatever this treatment is begins. In case I just want to say it while I'm lucid. You're going to be fine. Let me say it anyway. He went quiet. I never stopped loving you, she said. Simply. Without drama. As if she were reporting a fact about the weather. Not when you stood beside her. Not when you signed the papers. Not when I was sitting in that clinic at midnight with a needle in my arm. She looked at the ceiling. I tried. I thought at some point it would run out. Like a bank account. Like everything else. A small exhale. It didn't. He said nothing because there was nothing that deserved to be said into that sentence except silence. I don't say that so you'll feel worse, she continued. I say it because it's the truest thing about me and I've been carrying it alone and I'm tired of carrying things alone. She turned to look at him. I'm tired, Dante. I know. I want to stop being tired. Then let me carry some of it. His voice was raw in a way he couldn't smooth over. Please. I am asking you. Let me carry some of it. Her eyes searched his. Then she said, okay. One word. The same word she had said that morning by the hospital window. The smallest word. And again it cost him everything and gave him everything simultaneously in the specific, ruthless mathematics of loving someone you have failed. He reached out and took her hand. She closed her fingers around his. The monitor beeped steadily. Outside, the city moved through its night indifferent and enormous while two people in a small hospital room rebuilt the only thing that had ever actually mattered. The treatment began at midnight. And for 12 hours it got worse before it got better. Dante sat outside the room the entire time. At hour 9, Dr. Ruiz came out of the room and stopped in front of him and said simply if she had waited one more week he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. She turned the corner on the 4th day. Dr. Ruiz used clinical language responding to treatment, markers improving, encouraging trajectory, but what Dante saw was simpler and more total than any medical vocabulary. Camila sitting up in the hospital bed eating actual food, color returning to her face the way morning returns to a room someone forgot to close the curtains in. Slowly. Then all at once. The first time she laughed genuinely, at something Jasmine said. He was in the doorway and he had to look away for a moment because the sight of it was too large for him to hold straight on. Jasmine caught him looking. She walked over. They stood in the doorway together. She's going to want to minimize this, Jasmine said quietly. When she's better. She's going to say she's fine and she didn't need help and she would have figured it out. That's how she is. I know. You can't let her do that this time. I know. Jasmine looked at him with the complicated, grudging honesty of a woman who has revised her opinion of someone against her preference. She asked about you this morning. Before you got here. She paused. First thing. He didn't say anything. I'm not forgiving you, Jasmine said. Just so we're clear. You shouldn't. But she might. And if she does, she turned to look at him fully. Don't make her regret it. I have very specific ideas about what happens to people who make her regret things. Noted. Good. She went back inside. In the weeks that followed, Dante moved through the systematic work of dismantling everything built on a lie. Isabel's financial entanglements dissolved with the efficiency of a man who had always known exactly where the structural weaknesses were. The cartel that had threatened Camila handled in the language they understood, quietly and completely. The clinic administrator who had been intercepting medical communications removed from any position that could affect another patient. He did not do it for satisfaction. Revenge, it turned out, felt nothing like he had expected. It felt like clearing rubble from the site of something you destroyed yourself. Necessary. Not redemptive. He told Marco this one evening. "What did you think it would feel like?" Marco asked. "Like fixing something." "It doesn't fix anything," Marco said. "It just removes what's in the way of starting." He visited her every day during the full treatment course. When she could have visitors, he brought food and sat with her and learned slowly, with the specific difficulty of a man who has spent his whole life talking in commands, how to sit beside someone without an agenda. How to be present without requiring anything from it. She taught him. Without meaning to. Just by being Camila. The day she was discharged, walking out under her own power, Jasmine on one side, the city's winter light on her face, she found him at the bottom of the hospital steps. He was simply there. No car behind him. No men around him. Just him. She stopped on the last step, bringing her to his exact height, and looked at him. "You didn't have to wait," she said. "I wanted to." She studied him. "I know," she said. And she walked down the last step. And they walked to the car together, not touching, not talking, not needing to. Just finally, after everything, going in the same direction. 6 months later. No Empire noise. No security detail at the door. No marble lobbies or boardroom silences, or the particular atmosphere of men with too much power deciding the fates of people beneath them. Just a house near the coast. Wind through open windows. The sound of the ocean doing what it had always done, arriving and returning, indifferent to everything that had happened and everything that had not. Camila sat on the back steps with coffee gone cold. She wasn't cold. She had been cold for so long that warmth still surprised her. She still noticed it, still paused when it arrived. Dante sat beside her. Not touching. Just present. The way he had learned to be there without demanding, near without crowding. He had been learning this for 6 months. He was not yet perfect at it. He showed up every day to practice. "I keep thinking about what you said," he said. "In the hospital. That loving me was never supposed to cost you your soul." She was quiet for a moment. "It shouldn't have cost that much," he said. "Nothing should." She looked at the ocean. "No. It shouldn't have." He reached out. Covered her hand with his. She let him. They sat in the quiet between the water and the wind and everything they had survived, and something in that space between them that had been broken and grieved and painstakingly rebuilt breathed. And held. Would you forgive someone who destroyed you completely if they rebuilt themselves entirely to deserve you back? Comment below. We read every single one.